Create a new project by going up to the hamburger menu in the top left. Go to File, Create, New Empty Project. I'm going to choose desktop and mobile, but you can choose what makes sense for your project. Rename your project or accept the name that is auto-generated. I'm going to call mine gDtemp for now, and I'll rename it later. I'm also saving my files locally, but you can choose gDevelop Cloud. Then I'm just going to put these in the correct location and make a new folder called gDtemp and select that folder. Then tick the optimize for pixel art and personal preference, select or deselect the allow players to authenticate. Create project. Now you have a new empty project. Go to the add a new object. Choose the full games pack. Scroll down until you see Pixel Adventure and choose a background for your project. This will be for the first level of the game. Add to the scene. And you can close this window. Add our background somewhere above and outside the view box. Let's add a new group and we'll call this background. Double click to open that up and add the background. We're going to use some of the same syntax on different boards, so it'll make it easier if it's in a group that you could just copy paste. We also want to double click and add the tween behavior to our object. Apply on that. Go to the Events tab. Let's add a new event and add a condition. We want at beginning of the scene. Click OK on that. Let's add a new action. We want to do a couple of things so that we don't have to think about it each level. So one of those things will be to resize our background. Select size. For the width, we want 1480. The height will be 940. These dimensions are for a game window that's going to be pretty static. If your game is going to be moving left and right, where your camera follows the player off of the screen, then you'll need to modify these dimensions. Click OK on that. We also want to change the position. We want to set the X to -90, and we want to set the Y to -100. Click OK on that. And we want one more action. This is all for the background. So for the background, we want to tween the Y position. The tween identifier is created by us, so whatever you choose to call your tween, I'm going to call mine Animate Background. The 2Y is going to be background.y -64. We're using the number 64 because it works. This is not related to the size of your object, but it's how far up do you want your object to move. So I'm choosing 64 because it looks very nice. It's very smooth without jumping. Easing, we want linear. And milliseconds, we want 5,000. Click OK on that. And this time we want a new event. And for the new event, when the background tween has finished playing and the background tween identifier is Animate Background, click OK on that. When that has finished, we're going to tween the Y position again. This time we want to call this Reset Background. And the 2Y is going to be background Y plus 64. We're basically just resetting this here. The easing is still linear. And the duration this time is 1 millisecond. Click OK on that. And we also need a trigger once. And click OK on that. And this time we want a new event. New event when the background tween has finished playing. This time that tween is going to be reset background. Once that has finished, let's go ahead and copy and paste that first action to create an endless loop. We also need this trigger once. You can copy and paste that down here. And if we take a look at our background, we're tweening our background endlessly north. Some people refer to that as infinite loop or infinite scroll. I call it endless scrolling, but in any case, because of the math that we used, our tween is not jumping, it's going to be continuous. And now what we can do is start building out our game level. Make sure that you save your project. And we can also rename this scene. Is going to be level 1. And then just launch it to open that back up. Here we're going to bring in our game character. Click on Add a New Object. Go to Full Game Packs. Scroll until you see the Pixel Adventure. Scroll down about halfway until you see the game characters. The 3 hero characters are right here. Choose the one that speaks to you. I'm going to use the Ninja Frog because he looks cool. Add to scene. That'll take a minute because it has a lot of animations. Go ahead and close that once you're ready. So now that we have our character, let's go ahead and drag that into our scene. And the first thing that you notice is that our character is quite small. It would make creating your game much harder if you had to resize each of the assets, so we're not going to do that here. We have 2 options to make our assets appear larger. One of them would be to change the camera zoom. So if we look at our game character right now, he's really tiny. If we add an action to change our camera zoom, we're going to try 2, see what that looks like, and preview that. You notice that our character appears larger. So that's one method to change the asset size without having to manually change each of the assets. So the alternative is to add an action to set our game resolution. For this, we would do something like 600, 400. I'm going to be using this game resolution as I continue to build out my level. To make this easier, I'm going to add an asset. Go here to Add a New Object, create a new sprite. We're just going to call this game resolution. Add an animation, create with Pascal. Choose any color that you want. Leave the pen size to 1. Select the rectangle tool. Go to the top left corner, create your square. And it's 64 by 64, which is perfect. Rename the asset as game resolution. Click Save on that. Click Apply to bring that in. And just bring this anywhere. It doesn't really matter because we can resize it manually. I want the X and the Y to be 0 and 0. And then I want the width to be 600. And I want the height to be 400. And the Z order should be something like -10, just to make sure that it's always behind. So let's add a new event here, and we'll say at the beginning of the scene. Click OK on that, add an action, and we're going to hide the game resolution. Hide the visibility so that we can see it, but when we preview the game, it's not seen. But this enables us to add our assets inside this little play area, building a fairly static window so the player goes from left to right without the camera having to follow the player. Let's go ahead and create a group for camera. I like to set the actions that are updated on every frame higher than the at the beginning of. It's personal preference. And then just move this up to the top. Now that we have that, you can go back and delete the unused lines. Make sure that you save your project. And next we'll begin building out our game level. There's a few assets that are not included in the gDevelop asset store for the Pixel Adventure full pack, and it's this one tile sheet right here. So there's a couple of cool assets, and if you take a look at the developers page, you can see that the objects are there, but they're not included in the asset store. So I personally wanted to go through and recreate a couple of these levels. I thought that would be a fun little exercise. So I want those assets. One of the ways that we can get those assets into our project is by using a tool such as Tiled. You can go to the Tiled URL, which I will include in the description below. Just scroll on down to download now. Choose your donation amount, or just go to the no thanks, take me to the downloads. Choose the downloader that makes sense for your operating system. I've already downloaded my file, but once you download this executable, go to the folder where you saved that file, then double click to install that, and I'll meet you back here in a few minutes. Pause the video and resume once you have Tiled installed. Once you launch Tiled, this is the window that you see by default. You can see the version that I'm using up here in the top right. I'm using the latest 1.10.1. You can click on the news button down here and see if there's any new releases. You can see here I am indeed using the latest. You can also, when you downloaded the tile package, choose to follow the author. I'm not going to do a full-blown tiled demonstration. There are plenty of those already available. For this, I will talk in detail through the features that we use. Click on New Map. We're going to leave the top portion as default, and the map size, we're going to change these in a second, but let's start with the tile size. We know our tile set from the naming convention is 16 by 16. So we're going to change the tile width and height to 16 pixels each. Now down here, we know roughly we want maybe 600 or 700 by 400. So if you take a look here, you can see the dimensions. And as I start to increase the width, that shows me ballpark 704 will do. So for the height, I do want to decrease that because I want to be around 400. This is personal preference. You can change your map any way you like. I'm doing these dimensions for the first level. As we begin to build out levels, I may change the dimensions. Click OK for now. Couple of basics. If you haven't used Tiled before, you can press and hold the middle mouse button to move your map around. If you scroll the mouse button, you will move the map up and down. If you hold Control and roll the mouse button, you will zoom in. And if you press Control A, you will select everything. If you press Control Shift A, you will deselect. I tell you that one because there's a good chance that you will hit Control A and not know how to deselect your map. I've done it. We've all been there. We're going to use a couple of these buttons at the top. I will talk through those as we use them. Let's go ahead and click on New Tileset to bring in our tileset. We can just name it as terrain based on the naming convention from the developer. We do want based on a tileset image, not a collection of images. This is a single tileset. So click Browse here to locate your terrain 16 by 16. If you don't already have this, tick the Use Transparent Color. I don't really want a gray background, so I'm going to use the transparent color. Tile width and height is 16 by 16. We set that on the previous screen as well, but if you forgot and you needed to change it, you can change it right here. You can tell the 16 by 16 is in the naming convention. Click OK on that. You see in this box now, our tile set comes in. So we do have to do one more important thing, especially for gDevelop. Right click, let's edit this tile set. That's going to bring up the second tab up here. Left click and hold to highlight the first set of tiles, and then you can do this for the others that you plan to make a platform. So these ones are definitely going to be platforms for at least my game. Perhaps these top ones, I'll have to think about that for a time. I'm not going to use them on level 1, so I don't need those for now. But this class object right here, we're going to name this as platform. You do want to make a note of these because you will need them when we bring in our collision maps in gDevelop. What I like to do is bring up Notepad and just make a digital note. Saves on paper, nothing needs to be recycled. So I might use a couple of these for framing. So I'm going to click on these for now. And by framing, I mean walls. So I'm going to click on these and we'll name them walls for the class. And for these, I might use 1 or 2. These are going to be jump through platforms. We can add a class to some of these other tiles as we need to, but for now, I think that's all I'm going to need for level 1. You can leave this tab open for now. We may need to come back to it later. What I like to do right from the beginning is go ahead and save. So save your file, and we do need to do one more important thing here, and that is choose JSON map from the save as type. Make sure that that is JSON. And if you notice, the save as type accepts 2 extensions. So we will need to come up here and we will need to change this. So I'm going to call this level01.json. It's important that you manually type that so that it matches what is expected in gDevelop. Click New Folder. Personal preference here, I just like to keep my stuff organized. Make a new folder and call it Tiled. This is where we're going to save our maps outside of our gDevelop project folder. And if you notice, there's blue icon, a red icon. Blue is because I can paint in the empty cells here, but I can't paint anything out here. So if I select these, I can't paint those out there, but I can paint them in here. Couple of things that you can do. This is personal preference. If you want it to layer things so that you can hide your, let's say you want it to hide all of your walls. It's not necessarily required, but it's probably good practice. Let's rename this default level as platform. Click on this icon here, new layer. I want a tiled layer, so I'm just going to do another tiled layer. We're going to call that walls, another tiled layer, and we're going to call this jump through platform. So those are my layers. Now, the reason I wanted to make extra layers is so that I can show you, you can hide these, you can lock these to make sure that you don't accidentally paint on the wrong layer. It happens, trust me, it's quite frustrating when you're 30 minutes or more in painting some nice landscape and you realize that you're on your collision map. So yeah, don't do that. Start off right and just lock those layers when you're not using those. I'm going to use this shape fill tool. You don't have to, it's not required. You can certainly use the stamp tool, but I like the shape fill tool because I find it easier to work with. From here, choose any tile that you want to make the platform. If you accidentally paint something somewhere like that, maybe your cat came up and started pressing on the keyboard and mouse, just go to the erase tool up here and you can erase those cells. Alternatively, you could select all and just make sure that you're starting with an empty tile sheet and then Control-Shift-A to deselect those. So shape fill tool, keyboard shortcut is P. It's up to you if you want to memorize those keyboard shortcuts. Now, I was going to start with the platform, but in hindsight, I feel like I want to start with the walls. In order to paint on a tile, your mouse should not be red when you touch it. So if you're selected on platform, but you're trying to paint on walls, that's not going to work. You'll see that you can paint, sure, but it's red and it goes away when you release the mouse. Let's go ahead and add the end caps. I'm going to need 2 of those. You don't have to do this part, you can make your level look different. Certainly encourage that. Nope, I went too far with that. There you go. Use that. All right, so I'm going to do a couple of outlines now that you know how to use the end caps, and you can paint those there. And over here, we want these end caps and then just fill in the middle. Now, you could actually select 2 of these. It's not a huge deal, but you do want to start painting, for the width of the tile. So if I go this way, you could do that too. You can go left or right, but as long as you hold that, you're going to get the 2. From here, I can just paint in the middle, and don't be scared if getting crazy with the mouse. It will not drop until you release the mouse. It's one of the things I like about it. Notice we can't paint out here, we can't paint in there. Blue versus red. All right, so those are my framing walls. I'm going to lock this layer, and then I'm going to go to my platform layer. You can go up to view and you can choose to highlight the current layer. I like doing that because right now all 3 are locked. I can't tell which one I'm working on. So, no matter which one I select, they all look the same. So if you press the H key, that was the keyboard shortcut. Now when I'm on the walls layer, you notice it's a little bit brighter. If I click on one of the other layers, it's the opacity is a little bit lighter. I personally find that easier. If you need to toggle it on or off, just use the H key or go up to view and tick that option. So don't forget to save. You notice that you need to save when there's an asterisk up in the tab. All right, keep building out your level. I'll meet you back here in a few seconds. That will be our level 1 JSON, which we've already named. So now we can head back over to gDevelop, click on Add a New Object, scroll down until you see Tilemap, and we're going to call the Tilemap level 01 or level 1, personal preference. And the Tilemap file that we're looking for here, when we choose a file, choose the tiled file that we saved. Make sure it's the JSON because we use tiled. The LDTK is a different application. So now for the Atlas image, choose a file. Same thing, choose a file, and we want the terrain tile set. We're just going to bring in that entire tile set. And that is it for this one. So now when we click save, if it doesn't automatically come here for you, then you can just drag it in. Now we notice that our game resolution, I went a little bit bigger with the tile set based on being able to, so we're going to delete that for now. We can recreate it if we need to. But another crucial step here is that we need to add the collision maps. So the Z order of my frog is 1, which is why it's behind the tile map. I'm just going to make it 100 so it's always in front. Okay, so now even though I click the tile map, I can still click this. Okay, so that looks pretty good. When we preview this, it goes just off the left side, but you notice when we expand it, it doesn't look great, so we're going to fix that. Okay, so go to our events. Change the size of the window here. We want 1350 by 768. Click OK on that, and we also want to disable allow resizing. Allow resizing is going to be no. Okay, preview that. That's perfect. And then you can see here that we cannot resize the window. All right, so that perfectly frames up our scene here. Let's go back to our level 1. And I kind of want my little guy to come in there. I like when they drop in, so you don't have to do it that way, but it's personal preference. We're going to add a new object, and we're going to add our Tilemap collision, and this is where making a note of the class names was necessary. So this class filter must match the class name that we set in tiled. Choose a file for the tilemap JSON, and we've already brought that in because of the first tilemap, so select that tilemap. And now we can bring in our platform, and you don't have to line this up perfectly. I want it at 0 and 0, so it's perfect, so that we can see it, see what we're doing, and not have to worry about the tilemap. You can use an event at the beginning of the scene. In this platform layer, we want to change the X and the Y. So we want the position for X to be 0 and the position of Y to be 0. We also need to add a behavior to this. So add a behavior, and it's going to be platform, and the type is going to be platform. You can leave the ledges can be grabbed, ticked, click apply on that, and now go to your character and add a behavior for the platform character. We want to tick this can grab platform edges, click apply on that. Now when we preview, notice that our character lands where they're supposed to land. Oh, okay. All right, so it's supposed to be a little bit difficult, but I feel like I should be able to at least get to that corner there. Oh, I can't get to the corner. So this is one of the difficulties of using tiled. If you have things that need to be repositioned, then you have to go back to tiled, and then you have to update your tile map when you bring those back in. So not only do we need the platform collision, but we also had wall collisions. So we'll need to bring in wall collisions, and same thing, I think it was walls. That class filter is what's really important there. And we're just going to do the same thing, choosing the same tile map, click apply on that. And then same thing with this, we'll bring the walls in. For this, we'll have to add an event that if player touches walls, Ninja Frog, collision, with walls. And then the action will be to separate the objects. And we want to choose the Ninja Frog from the object that won't move, which is the walls. So now if I didn't set the position. So here we can copy this and paste it down here, and then instead of platform, we'll make it walls. So now if I try to go through the wall, I can't. Really want to make it over here. Oh, I see the problem there, but it doesn't matter because we're going to put some spikes in. All right, so let's go ahead and add some spikes. So click on Add a New Object, go to the Asset Store tab, find the Pixel Adventure Full Game Pack, select the spikes here. Let's bring that into our scene and close this window. So now we have spikes, but it's going to be easier to have tiled spikes. So add a new object, from scratch, choose tiled sprite, select an image, and this time we're going to scroll down until we see spikes, and we're going to call this spikes tiled. Leave it as 32 by 32, click apply on that. It's just easier. So we're going to put these here, and then we're just going to stretch this window across like that. Line that up a little better. And perfect. So now we have some tiled spikes. So add a group. We're going to call this danger. Everything that's dangerous will go in here. Double click on that. Let's add our spikes and our tiled spikes. Okay, so if our ninja frog is in collision with danger, click OK. Ninja frog animation. Change the animation by name, and here we want hit. And then let's see what that looks like. Nope. That actually kind of worked. Okay, so let's try that again. I just wanted to see that. Yeah, that looks good. I don't even need to do anything else with that. It's kind of glitchy, but it worked itself out. That's all working. And let's see, I feel like I want to bring the tiled spikes down just a touch. Yeah, that looks better. Okay. All right, so that looks pretty good. Let me see here. So we could do something like add spikes there, which is, I mean, can he jump from the other one? All right, so we gotta change the animation back once that's done. All right. So, do I want the spikes there? I want them like right there, making it difficult, but not impossible. Maybe right there. So since we have multiple collision maps, what we can do to make that a little bit easier is add a group for the collision maps. And then let's add our collision maps in there. It's going to be platform and so far walls. And with that, we only need one event here. So we can get rid of this one and change this to collision maps. So let's make sure that works. Lands and can't go through walls. So we still have one more collision map to bring in. Let's go ahead and do that now. It was the jump through. So this one's going to be jump through, and choose that same JSON. Click apply on that. And we can zoom out on this, put our third collision map up here, which is fine. And we can move that up there so it makes more sense, keeping all of our maps together. So when you're making a game, you will jump back and forth when you're kind of planning some of the stuff out. So now let's make our character walk. Let's add a group here, layer movement. And Ninja Frog is moving. Set the animation for Ninja Frog to walking. I guess running. He's running. So we also want a Ninja Frog is on floor here, right? So if he's on the floor and moving, all right, so that worked. And then we also want, copy this, paste it down here, and we want the inverse of this is not moving, and on the floor set the animation to idle. All right, so that should be a quick oh. All right. So then we'll want another one. We can just copy and paste this. And Ninja Frog is moving. So we want the inverse of that. And actually, I think we want is jumping here. Is jumping. And not on floor. Invert condition. Set the animation to jump. Right. Preview that real quick. I can't get past my own level here. I feel like there's a trick to it. Nah, I almost did it. Nope. I feel like I should be able to beat my own level here. Nah, see, that's not going to work because that was glitchy, so we'll have to finish that animation. I can't get past my level. All right, so it's time. I have to go back to Tiled and move some stuff around. All right, so back in Tiled, I've renamed my file in case I needed to come back to it. So this was the original level 1. What I want to do is come up here to the platform level and make sure that that is unlocked. If you can't tell which level you're working on, the H key makes that a little bit easier because the opacity on the 2 levels that we're not working on is a little bit lighter and harder to see. So what I want to do is erase this platform that was our troublemaker and go ahead and bring that back in using the shape fill tool. We might want to make it level with this one here. That should make it a little bit easier to get to, or we can bring it down just a little bit. So this one, we're just going to pop the bottom on there, and we should be able to make all of those jumps now. Unlock the remaining layers, and let's do a file export as, and just come back to your original folder. We're going to do the modified version. Make sure that your save as type is JSON, and then you have the hard-coded JSON in the file name. Go ahead and hit save on that, and if you're overwriting an existing file that you already have there, that's fine. So let's close, discard the changes. I'm going to open the file, and I want to go to my GD and mod and make sure that that is indeed the modified version. So now I can go back to gDevelop, and we'll have to go to the Tilemap here, and we're going to want to bring the Tilemap back in. So let's click this replace, choose file, choose the level 1 again. It's going to bring it in, and if you notice, it's going to give it a new name. So that name is going to be important for the collision map. So go ahead and copy that, hit apply here, and let's go to each of our collision maps and just paste that in. Click apply on that one, walls, paste there, click apply, and jump through. Same thing, hit paste on that. Now when we test our level, let's make sure that all of the features are working as expected. Jump through works. Okay, I can get to that last jump that I couldn't get to before. I can get to all of the harder levels, and that last jump, I just wanted to test that I can make that, and I can. Okay, so jumping and all of our collision maps appear to be working. Oh, I forgot the test. Make sure I can't go through the walls. Good. Okay. So I can't go through the walls. Jump-throughs are working. Platforms are working. I'm going to do one more thing here. I want to show the layers, and I want to put my player on its own layer. And that's just going to make it easier every time I need to adjust my player. So regardless of the Z order, now my player should be on top. So when I select my player here, I can change the Z order to 0 just to test it, but I also need to change the player to the player layer. And if I select my background, the Z layer is lower than the platform layer, but I can still always select my player because the player layer is higher than the base layer. So that's just a little thing that I may start doing in all of my games just to make it a little bit easier as opposed to messing around with the Z order every time. Okay, so our tile map is corrected and our collision maps are correctly pointing to the new modified tile map. So back in gDevelop, I want to fix a couple of things for our player movement. Click on the Events tab and let's add a new event. Add a new condition, and we want to add a key press. If the key is pressed and we want the right key, we want to flip the player horizontally. We're going to leave this one as a no. Click OK on that. I want to trigger once here. Click OK on that. Now let's copy and paste this, changing to the left key and changing this to a yes. I also want to bring a trigger once up here for the jumping. And let's preview our game. Moving right, moving left, jumping looks good. Let's go ahead and add a few more objects to our scene. Click here on Add a New Object, choose Full Game Packs, scroll down until you see Pixel Adventure. Then let's choose some fruit. Try to choose one or two that vary in color so we can alternate those. We're also going to choose a bad guy, some dust particles collected, which is basically fruit collected, and the flag. So here's the checkpoint. Go ahead and add that to the scene. Click back on that. I'm going to choose an apple, add that to the scene, back, choose an orange, add that to the scene, back, and collected, which is the fruit collected. This is optional if you don't want to do this part. Add that to the scene, and select a bad guy. I'm going with this angry pig here. Add that to the scene, dust particle. So there's the dust particle, add that to the scene. Now that you have all of those, you can close this window, scroll down, make sure that you have all of them. If you don't, just go back into the asset store and add anything that was missing. So now what we're going to do is go ahead and sprinkle the fruit around our scene, and I'll meet you back here in just a moment. Okay, so this is my board. It seems a tiny bit cluttered just now, but I think I'm going to have fun collecting this fruit. In fact, I'm even going to add one more apple right there as incentive for that jump through. I'm going to add one more object to my screen here, and that is going to be the checkpoint flag. So I'm going to bring that up here, and we're going to add an event to hide that at the beginning of the scene. And then once all of the fruit is cleared, then we're going to show that event. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's add a new event, add a condition, and we're going to do beginning of the scene. Click OK on that. And also I want to add a new group, event group, and we're going to call this checkpoint flag. And let's go ahead and nest this here. And let's add an action, and that action is going to be for the checkpoint flag. Let's go ahead and hide visibility. So we're going to hide that visibility, click OK on that, and if we preview our game at the beginning, we don't see the flag. Perfect. Next, what we're going to do is go back to our scene. Let's add a group. We're going to call this fruit. Double click to open that up. Now we're going to add all of our fruit to this group. So in my case, it's going to be an apple and an orange. Be sure to add all of your fruit if you have that there. Click apply once you're done with that. We're also going to make a minor change to our fruit. Let's double click on the first piece of fruit. Let's go to add an animation. And we're going to add a sprite and choose from the asset store, as opposed to having collected come in separately and then having to use a separate event. We can just add it here as a second animation. So for this, you'll have to select each one. Go ahead and add the first one and then repeat the process for each additional. I'll meet you back here in a second. Once that's done, click apply and do the same thing for your additional pieces of fruit. I only have the orange, so I'm going to go ahead and take care of that now. I'll meet you back here in a second. Right, now that that is done, we have our fruit in a group, and we have a second animation for each piece of fruit. Let's go to the event sheet, and we're going to add a new event as well as a new group. Let's name the group fruit, and let's bring this event down so it's nested under fruit. And the condition will be if our player, in my case it's Ninja Frog, be sure to choose your player, is in collision with the fruit. And that's the fruit group, not the individual fruit. Click OK on that. If there's a collision, let's add an action. And the action is going to be to, for the fruit group, change the animation, and the value will be 1. Click OK on that. We're going to need a new event here. Don't forget to nest that. Click to add the condition. For this one, for fruit, if the animation has finished, let's add an action to delete the fruit. So let's test that. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so that is working exactly as expected. Next, we're going to add a scorekeeping system to our game. Let's go up here to add a new object. Click on text object. Name the object score text. Use score:0 as the initial text. Click apply on that, and that should do it for the event. Let's go to the event sheet. Come down here to fruit. We're going to add a new event for the beginning of the scene. Click OK on that. Add an action. Let's add a global variable. Change the number value, and we're going to call this score. Set to, the initial value is going to be 0. Now, if we go back, we can drag this into our scene. And if you want to modify the font size, just double click and then downsize that. You can also change the color. I'm going to go with a blue. Click OK on that. Let's also add a new layer. The new layer I'm going to call HUD. I'm choosing HUD versus UI because when I looked it up, HUD was the appropriate term. UI, you can still use that. It makes sense. I also want to bring this down so that it's below my player. When my player jumps across the score, I want my player's head to be in front of the score, not behind it. So the order is top down, so the player's on top of everything, then the HUD, in this case the score. Let's go ahead and set that to the HUD layer, and then the base layer and everything else. Go back to the event sheet, and we're going to add a few more conditions. Once the animation for the fruit has finished, we're going to delete the fruit, but in addition to that, we're also going to modify the variable. So go under other actions, go to variable, global variables, and change the number variable. Our variable is score. We're going to add, and you can put any number that you want there. I'm going to use 5. Click OK on that. When the frog is in collision with each piece of fruit, it's going to add 5 points. We also want to change the score text. We're going to modify that text, and we're going to set it to, and this has to be in quotations for this first part, it's going to be score, colon, and space, another double quote, and then we're going to add toString, and you'll see here toString, and it's going to be for the variable. It's a global variable, and that global variable is score. Click OK on that. We should be able to test that now. Click preview, and when I grab a piece of fruit, my score is indeed changing. Looks like it's working, and come up here, you can see that when I jump, my player stays on top of everything else. That is working as expected, so now we have a point system for our game. Don't forget to save your project. Next, we're going to set an event to show our flag if the player, in my case, the Ninja Frog, has gotten all of the fruit. So let's go to the event sheet, and for the checkpoint flag, let's click on that and then add an event. We're going to add a condition for fruit and number, and we want the number of object instances on the scene, and we want to set that to less than 1. So once we have that, then the add action will be to show the flag. We want to add another event that if our player, Ninja Frog, is in collision with the flag, then we're going to change to scene 2, and we'll have to add a scene 2. Come up here to your project manager, click on add a new scene, and just call it level 02. Hit enter on that and go ahead and launch it. Let's add a quick placeholder object for text, and we're going to do level 2, and this is a level 2 placeholder. Click apply on that, and let's drag that into our scene. So back to our event sheet, when the Ninja Frog is in collision with the checkpoint, we're going to change the scene. And our scene in this case is going to be a level 2. We're going to test all of that out. I'll meet you back here in a second after I've cleared this board. Okay, so that worked. All the fruit is cleared, and now if I touch this flag, level 2. Perfect. All of that works as expected. Next, we're going to add our enemy character to our game. So scroll down to find your enemy character. Mine is the Angry Pig. Let's go ahead and drop him in the scene somewhere over here. That'll be the starting position. I do want to get a little closer to make sure his feet are on the ground, above the ground. So I like the way that looks. So make a note of the X and the Y. X in my case is the 22 and the Y is 308. And then left click and hold the shift key and drag this over to about the end there. And let's see what that looks like and make a note of the X position. The Y won't change, obviously, because our little character is just going to go back and forth. While we're here, go ahead and double click on the character and go to our behaviors tab. Click here to add a new behavior. Go ahead and type in tween, and we want the tween behavior. Click apply on that once we have that set. Shift and hold, or just manually type in 22 if your board matches mine, or whatever your left initial number was. Now that we have that, let's go to the events sheet. Click here at the bottom for a new event, and let's also add a new event group. Call this enemy, and drag this event down so it's nested. Let's add a condition, and that condition is going to be at the beginning of the scene. Click OK on that. Add an action. For the angry pig, we want to tween the X position, and the tween identifier is created by us, so we're going to call this animate enemy right. The 2x will be that right number that we made a note of. In my case, it's 187. Easing, I want to use linear, and duration in milliseconds, I want to start with 5,000 to see what that looks like. We don't want to destroy the object when the tween finishes. Click OK. Let's add a new action. We also want to change the animation by name, and the animation that we want is walk. Click OK on that, and let's just test to see what that 5,000 milliseconds looks like. That looks pretty good, and the walk is very cute. Okay, so the angry pig stops where he's supposed to stop. Now add a new event. Make sure that that event is nested. Should be in line with our previous condition. So now we want to go to angry pig, and when the tween finishes playing, the tween that we want is animate right, and the action will be to once again tween the X position. Make a new identifier, and that's going to be animate left. And don't forget, it must be in quotes. The 2x is that left number that you made a note of. In my case, it was 22. Easing is still linear, and duration in milliseconds. I like the way that 5,000 looked. So we don't want to destroy the object when the tween finishes. Click OK on this, and we're also going to need a trigger once here. Click OK on that, and we also need to add a new action to flip our player at the end of this animation so that he goes back the other way. And we want to flip horizontally, and activate flipping will be yes. Click OK on that. We want to add a new event. This will complete our endless loop. So here we can copy this and paste this down here. Just change the animation to animate left. And now we want to copy this first one and paste it down here. And also we want to copy this flip action here, and we want to change that to no. And last thing we need is this trigger once. Those three events will complete our endless loop. Go ahead and test that to make sure that your enemy is moving as expected. Perfect. Next, we're going to add animation for when our player collides with our enemy. I do want to do a little bit of cleanup here. I want to get rid of the word movement from that group, and I want to add a comment. So click on this first event, and then go up here and add a comment. We'll call this player movement. Okay, and then down here, click on the checkpoint group just so the comment lands in the right place. Go ahead and add a comment there and then nest that. We're going to call this player collisions. Let's go ahead and move these collision events down here. Make sure that that is nested appropriately. And that cleans up the background group and adds a little bit more organization to our player group. Next, we're going to add the collision for our player with our enemy. So add a new event here if our player is in collision with our enemy. In my case, it's the angry pig, and I don't have it in a group because I only have the one enemy. So now we're going to add an action. Delete player. And this is just basic. We'll go back and tweak this later to add the animations, but for now I just want to make sure it works. So we're actually going to, let's copy and paste this event if the ninja frog is in collision with the angry pig and if the ninja frog is falling, then we're going to delete the angry pig. We're also going to simulate a jump, and the reason for that is to give a little bounce to our ninja frog character, and then we have to also allow jumping again. Click OK on that. So now if the ninja frog touches the angry pig from the side, my player should delete. Perfect. And if the ninja frog touches the angry pig from the top. Okay, so we're going to add a condition here if the ninja frog is on the floor because those two were competing. Now let's try it. Perfect. Okay, so then I want to go back and test. If the ninja frog touches the angry pig from the side, then the player should delete. Perfect. Okay, so those two things are working as expected. So we also need a second condition here. If the checkpoint is visible, not marked as hidden, and the ninja frog is in collision with that checkpoint, let's check that again. Okay, good. So that fixed that bug. It's always important to playtest. And those last two are actually really hard to get to, but the trick is to just move the cursor the last second. So then I can clear my whole board. Boom. All right, so that all works as expected. Just make sure that you're adding this checkpoint is visible, not marked as hidden to this line right here to fix that bug. We're right around the 1 hour mark. I'm going to go ahead and end part 1 here, splitting this into a series. I hope that you'll join me in part 2 where we continue to build our game level, additional levels, as well as exploring features such as double jumps, particles, enemy AI, and power-ups. I hope this helps you, and we'll see you next time.